Good morning and welcome to NCompass Live, the Nebraska Library Commission's weekly webinar. I'm Deborah Dragos, Director of Technology and Access Services here at the Library Commission. Today we are pleased to have Jim Shaw, Director of Collections at the University of Nebraska Omaha's Criss Library, as our guest presenter. Jim's topic is the discontinuation of several publications by the U.S. Census Bureau and how to access that data from other sources. We are also joined today by Beth Goebel, the Government Information Services Director here at the Commission, who is our go-to person for finding government statistical data, and Lori Sailors, who also works with our federal documents. Jim?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Jim Shaw, the disembodied voice this morning, and welcome to this session we're calling Learning to Live Without a Statistical Abstract, Thinking About Future Access to Government Information. I did this presentation in October last year at the Nebraska Library Association Annual Conference, and this morning it's basically a reprise. You may immediately notice something a little unusual for a contemporary presentation in that I don't have a PowerPoint running here. The reasoning behind that was I was standing in front of a group of 50 or 60 people and putting a bunch of statistical tables up on PowerPoint slides. No one would have been able to read anything 3 rows back. So I did a lot of handouts, and what I did for the presentation is I wrote it up. A more traditional conference style presentation, embedded a whole lot of links in it, and through the Nebraska Library Association internet site, which is nebraskalibraries.org, you can click into the conference area and get a link to SlideShare where you can capture the presentation for yourself. Or if you would prefer, you can email me at jshaw, JSHAW, at unomaha.edu, and I'll be happy to email the PDF directly to you if you don't want to pick it off of SlideShare. And my colleague here is adjusting something on the screen.
Sorry. We had a couple of people say that they couldn't see it, so I was just trying to double check to make sure.
Okay.
If you can't see the screen, please type something into the question box. Thank you.
Okay, so let's get going here. Last year was an interesting year. It's almost exactly 1 year. It was March of 2011 that the announcement came down that the Census Bureau was looking at program cuts that would eliminate one whole division, the Statistical Compendia Division, which was over 10 staff and the associated budget and everything it took to pull together a number of publications that we hold very dear: the Statistical Abstract of the United States, the State and Metropolitan Area Data Book, and the County and City Data Book, the U.S. Counties Web Database, Current Industrial Reports, and a personal favorite of mine, the Consolidated Federal Funds Report. Now, as of October last year, when I made my presentation at the Library Association Conference, it wasn't clear that these things were all going to be cut. It seemed pretty certain, but nothing had been advertised as being completely certain just yet. But since that time, it's true. The first thing we're going to do here is link out to the Statistical Abstract. And you will notice okay. We're having a little technical issue here. There we go. You will notice that this is the main statistical abstract screen at the Census Bureau website, and in red you have the big note down there now. The U.S. Census Bureau is terminating the collection of data for the Statistical Compendia program effective October 1st, and it goes on to talk about the other publications there too. So it's official. The Statistical Abstract of the United States, which was published annually from 1878 up through the last edition in 2012, is gone. We will not be getting another one. You know, I turned 50 years old last year, and I've been a librarian for sorrowful thought, half of those years.
Now, Jim, some of us are going to be 61 in 2 weeks, and careful what you say.
Yeah,
how long some of us have been documents.
Yeah. This is really interesting because in 1987 I actually made a presentation at an Iowa Library Association conference, and I called it Basic Ready Reference, Documents that a Reference Librarian Cannot Live Without. And my #1 pick was the Statistical Abstract of the United States. A number of years later, in 1999, I made a presentation at Nebraska Library Association conference. Different title, same idea though, sort of a top 10 for government resources.
I was involved in that with you.
Yeah, and
this was definitely one of our top 10.
Yeah, the Statistical Abstract was again one of the top resource we needed people to know about. So we're sort of having a bit of a memorial service this morning, but we do have to pick up and move on. And it's important that we think about it because as librarians and people who help people do research, we are going to have to start thinking about what kinds of alternative resources are available for this kind of information. We're going to have to think in terms of trying to find resources that are affordable. You know, the statistical abstracts, for those of us out in the field, it's a fairly low-cost way of connecting up to things, and we're going to have to try to find alternatives that, as much as possible, continue to be that way. And it also prompts us to think some more, again, about public access to government information. What does that practically mean? I'm concerned personally that a resource like the Statistical Abstract, which anybody can use and it's very easy to help people use, if we replace that with basically a bunch of web databases that you have to go and extract the data from and mine it yourself and everything, that's going to have a real impact in libraries where we deal with a whole lot of people. I'm in a university library with people who are fairly sophisticated, usually with packages like SPSS and things like that, but I can imagine there are a lot of places where, you know, if I tell you, well, here's a data file, go have fun, that's not going to be very helpful to them. So there are a lot of issues that come up with the demise of the Statistical Abstract. But before I go further, I do need to stop and I'm going to go back to my presentation here. Thank you. And I'm going to actually go jump for if there's anybody on the line who's not too familiar with the Statistical Abstract, or we should do a little bit of a review. I am going to go link up to some tables, and so I'll click and then we'll get this set up again. Maybe the very top one. Yeah. Okay, this is a table from the 2011 Statistical Abstract, which is the one I was working with last fall. Patents and trademarks from 1990 to 2009. And you'll notice that for 2004 through 2009, you have some annual data there, then some 2000, 1995, 1990, you know, sort of interspersed data before that. Nice statistical table. Helpful, useful. But for those of us in the library world, couple of things to make note of. We really care a lot about these source notes down here. So the tables in the Statistical Abstract will have the notes to the sources of the data. The U.S. Patent and Trademark Office gives you the title of the source. It gives you a URL so you can go out and take a look at this yourself. And then it says, and unpublished data. And unpublished data. Some of the data in this table, it's not clear here which data was not or were not released publicly or distributed publicly. It was unpublished. And so we'd have to go back to that URL and go look around and see if we can figure out what that is. Maybe have to contact the agency to try to find more if we needed it. But that source note is really important. It tells you something about the kind of data you're dealing with, where it's coming from, and it gives you what you need to know to start following up if you need more. That's extremely important. I remember even in library school, all those many years ago now, I think I had at least 2 classes. No, 3, a social sciences reference class, a business reference class, and a government documents class. The Stat Abstract was examined in all 3 of those classes, and each professor made that point several times. You got to pay attention to those source notes. Those are your leads for more data. Okay, let's go back to another table. So I will, can I just go ahead and cancel? Okay, here we go. And we'll go to this one. Probably need to close this one. No, that's the patents and trademarks table. So we need to exit out. Yeah, 774. Thank you. Okay, patents and trademarks is still up there. So we need to get to, can I just close this tab?
Okay. Do you have a direct link to it?
Okay. Okay, so what went on there? That link is interesting. I tested all the links on Friday. That's interesting. Oh well, we'll go on to the next one.
Do you want the table?
Yeah. Ah, here we go. Well, sorry for the little glitches there, folks. We're managing this. Appreciate your patience. Table 1239, adult participation in selected leisure activities by frequency, 2009. And, you know, it's a whole page. You can see on the left the different kinds of activities that were surveyed for, and you can get how many people participated in the last 12 months and percentages and frequency of participation. It's interesting stuff, everything from bird watching to crossword puzzles, picnicking. By the way, you don't see going to the library or visiting the library on this list.
Okay, and there's me on that list, the Sudoku people.
The Sudoku people, huh?
Yeah.
Man, they actually have that broken out separately now. Zoo attendance.
It's an addiction.
Yeah, well, zoo attendance. I go to the Henry Durley Zoo in Omaha several times a year. But notice down here the source table again. The source table, the source for the table, Media Mark Research and Intelligence. New York, New York, top line reports. It's copyrighted information. See also MediaMark.com. This data in this table on leisure activities is sitting behind a paywall at MediaMark. If you want to go get this data yourself, you're going to have to go to MediaMark.com, get your credit card out, and buy it. So this is a case where the statistical abstracts, the folks who put together the statistical abstract were able to gather this data, and they're presenting it to you. It may not have everything you might want to see, but it gives you some insight into this topic, and it's not costing you anything here. And this is something the statistical abstract has done for a long time. It gives you a picture of data out there that is privately collected, privately surveyed, and the source notes will give you the clue if you want to go ahead and pursue it further. But this is data that's actually hidden behind a paywall. And then, let's see, 1240, the next table down, we don't have to do any. Household pet ownership, 2006. This is a real live one in terms of, I picked up my phone at my desk last summer, and I had a colleague from the University of the Nebraska Medical Center on the other end of the line, and he was looking for information about household pet ownership, and his immediate question was, did they ask that question in the census? And no, they don't have a question about pet ownership in the United States Census or in the American Community Survey. So I had to go try to find a source for that kind of data. And so I keep the statistical abstract close enough to my desk that I could just swivel in my chair, reach out and grab it. And so that's the very first thing I did. I checked the statistical abstract, and I find this table in here, U.S. Pet Ownership and Demographic Source Book. The latest edition was 2007. So the American Veterinary Medical Association had contracted for a nationwide survey, and you can buy the results of the survey from the American Veterinary Medical Association. I made note of the prices. If you're a member of the AVMA, you can buy a copy of the survey for $174, downloaded from their website, or you can purchase a softcover copy. And the highest price, $279. If you want a non-member wants to buy a softcover copy of the report, it's $279. So this is also an example of data that is revealed to us by the statistical abstract that you have to purchase if you want to go get, and it gives you an idea of some of the prices involved. So I ended up sending that professor at the medical center, I ended up sending him a message with a link to the appropriate place at the AVMA website, and I can't tell you if he decided to follow up and purchase a copy or not. I did check OCLC WorldCat, and at that time when I checked, I didn't find a record where it might be available through interlibrary loan. So we were going to be pretty limited in what we could offer to do for the gentleman. Plus, if the library was going to buy it, I figured his medical center library could pay for it as opposed to mine. Now, that's just the way that went. But in any event, the point I'm trying to make here is that the statistical abstract not only gives us access to a lot of data collected by the government, but it also gives us data, it gave us data that was compiled by private organizations and agencies. And it's not only data at your hand, it's data, it's leads to going to get more data. It's been a critically important resource for us for a long time. If you've worked in an American library at all for any length of time at all and done any sort of reference work at all, you probably have worked with the statistical abstract, and now you're going to have to learn how to work without a statistical abstract. It's not a real pleasant prospect in a lot of ways. It's important to note that the statistical abstract was not the only series that we're losing with the demise of the Statistical Compendia division at the Census Bureau. I'm going to go back out to my presentation and get that there. Okay, now we need to get this.
How about if you click whatever you're going to and then we'll...
Okay, where am I at? What I'm going to go, I want to go take a look at, I'm going down to the next page, so I want to talk a little bit about the Consolidated Federal Funds Report. Are we live?
Yes, yeah.
We are live. Good. Okay.
Oops. Sorry, let me get this closed.
Okay. This is the Consolidated Federal Funds Report, and I'm going to go ahead and see how this works. Again, notice the red text at the top of the screen. U.S. Census Bureau has terminated the Federal Financial Statistics Program.
Just a second, it hasn't caught up.
Okay.
Now it's caught up.
Okay. We're at the Consolidated Federal Funds Report, and U.S. Census Bureau has terminated the Federal Financial Statistics Program effective for this current fiscal year end right now. And okay, so it's done. The Consolidated Federal Funds Report, I'm going to take a look at the most recent data here. United States, let's take, we're in Nebraska here, and we'll take county level data, all fund types.
Oh, I'm still on no for county.
Okay, thank you. And I'll choose, we're sitting in Lincoln, Nebraska right now, so we'll go ahead and pick up Lancaster County. Lincoln is the capital of Nebraska, also the county seat for Lancaster County. And in a moment, we caught up?
Now
Okay, we are caught up. What we have here in the Consolidated Federal Funds Report is program by program federal government expenditures in Lancaster County in 2010, fiscal year 2010. And they're whole numbers too. You don't have to add zeros to the numbers. They give you the straight numbers, which is nice. So people don't get confused about that. Social Security disability insurance. Rural rental assistance payments. Federal family education loans, program by program by program. The Milk Income Loss Contract Program, Wetlands Reserve Program, program by program by program, federal expenditures in Lancaster County, Nebraska. If you print this file out that we have on the screen right now, if I remember correctly, it runs on for 6 or 8 pages. Now, those of you who have been in doing research or helping people in libraries for a while, think for yourself, if you don't have something like this, the Consolidated Federal Funds Report, to pull all this together in one place for you, what would you do? How would you proceed to pull this together on your own? And if you can come up with a good answer to that, my colleagues here at the Nebraska Library Commission will be glad to invite you here to do an NCompass Live.
You don't even have to come here.
Because to my knowledge, there is no alternative for this. I can go to several different places and begin to pull together parts of this. I cannot pull all of this together. The Census Bureau is recommending usspending.gov, a website which is a great place to go for contract awards and things. But if to actually distill that data and get it into geographic summary form like this, may the heavens favor you if you want to try that on your own. Losing the Consolidated Federal Funds Report, it really hits hard. For me, as a librarian who's a government document specialist, it probably hits me harder than losing the Statistical Abstract, actually, because when I need this thing, this is all I've got. With the Statistical Abstract, I can go back to the source notes and things like that and maybe get some headway and claw my way back to some data. But without this thing, it really hurts. So this is another example of what we're losing. The Statistical Abstract has gotten all the attention, but the Consolidated Federal Funds Report, as far as I'm concerned, is a really massive loss. How much money has been going into the school lunch program here? Over $20 million in Lancaster. Yeah, over $20 million in Lancaster County, Nebraska. 8 million. 8 million, so I'm off a line there. Cooperative extension was the 20. Okay, $8 million. $8 million in Lancaster County, Nebraska. That's a chunk of money. That's a lot of money. So, something else to think about, and I was thinking about the Consolidated Federal Funds Report yesterday, over the last week even, because about 10 days ago, the New York Times published a wonderful article that took a look at federal expenditures by county around the state. And being the New York Times, of course, they sent reporters out to red state counties and talked to people about what kinds of programs they're registered in, like school lunch, and talk to them about what would it mean to you if this program got cut. And a lot of times people don't even realize the kinds of federal financial support that's coming into their area that they depend on they don't even realize it's there. So this is something else that we're losing. So to keep my presentation on track and moving along, I sort of need to sum up this part at this point. And that is the cuts, budget cuts at the Bureau of the Census have taken effect. The Statistical Abstract of the United States, the 2012 edition, is the last edition. Along with that, we're losing the Consolidated Federal Funds Report. We're losing the County and City Data Book. We're losing the State and Metropolitan Area Data Book. I'm expecting that the USA Counties web database will just go dormant. It may still be there, but probably not updated any longer. I haven't seen confirmation yet on current industrial reports, but I should probably go look at their web page and see if there's the big red note up there yet. I haven't gone to look at that one yet. But we're taking some pretty severe losses, which has to put us into mind, what are we going to do? Practically, what are we going to do to help people? What are we going to do to help ourselves? Unfortunately, as I segue into the second part of my presentation here, alternatives to the Statistical Abstract, I have to admit up front, I'm almost doing a bait and switch on you because I don't really have any good alternatives. The best thing out there that I'm aware of that you could use as an alternative for the Stat Abstract would be the ProQuest statistical data sets. It's a commercial database that was started by LexisNexis a number of years ago. ProQuest bought it from LexisNexis in 2010. And it pulls together all sorts of data from sort of like a Statistical Abstract from a number of different places, and puts it together for you with a web interface. It's a really nice system if your library can afford $14,000, $15,000, $16,000 a year or more. I don't have it at the library at the University of Nebraska at Omaha. We have looked at it a couple of times. I'm imagining we're going to have to circle back and look at it again because we may need something like that that pulls things together for you. Now the price information I gave you, I threw out a price there, $14,000, $15,000, $16,000 a year. The way these things are priced, public libraries may look at a different pricing scheme than academic libraries. Academic libraries, depending on your full-time equivalent students and what other kinds of ProQuest products you're purchasing from them and what kind of package deal you put together. Folks, you understand that pricing is, pretty flexible out there. But it's going to cost you some serious money. And for an awful lot of libraries, it's going to cost you more than you can probably afford, or you're going to have to make a real hard choice and let something else go that's pretty important to you in order to pick up the ProQuest statistical data sets. So that's something to think about. So what else do you do? Well, when I was thinking about this issue for my presentation last October, and why don't we just jump back to that PDF now? So we'll be right back with you in a moment, folks. Are we back?
Not quite yet. There it is.
Okay. Okay, alternatives to the statistical abstract. I get invited a couple of times a year to go speak, guest lecture, make presentations to classes, library school classes. The University of Missouri-Columbia offers their master's program through classes held on our campus. And I'm invited to go meet with several of those classes each year. And one of the things I try to do with the students with some real practical examples when we're in the class is when I'm looking for alternative resources, I need to answer some questions. This is how I frame the situation. Who would care enough to go to the trouble and expense of compiling the information? Okay. Data does not just grow on a tree. Someone has to go out there and some way or another gather it. If it's original data, they're going to have to do a survey. They're going to have to extract information from a resource somewhere and bring it together. But you're going to have to figure out who would care enough, who would have reason to go to the trouble and expense of compiling the data. That's the first question you have to deal with. Now, you sit and think about that for a while, and then with that information, you start to think about part two. Who would have reason to be willing to give it away or at least charge a manageable cost? Remember, a couple of the tables we looked at earlier had data in them, but the source of the data was private. So would they be willing to sell it to you at a cost you can afford? So in presenting this kind of thing with the students, I have a few examples in my toolkit. And one which I like a lot is, and you can do this all over the country. You can do this all over the country. I have a link up here on my handout to Westroads Mall in Omaha, Nebraska. Shopping mall websites. How many of you have actually gone out and looked at a shopping mall website and then clicked on the little tab that says leasing information? When you go look at the leasing information area, very often, I can't guarantee you every time, but very often you will find demographic reports about that area. Like at Westroads Mall, over the course of years, they've updated a map, a radius map, where you could and then layer on household income information onto a radius map. So, here's the mall, and then, here's your immediate market area. and then market and demographic tables and things like that. Well, Westroads Mall and the management company of Westroads, they have a real interest in leasing space at the mall. So they have an embedded interest in giving some information away to convince people it's worth leasing space at our mall. So that's what I'm driving at. It's a good example of this idea: who would care enough to go to the trouble and expense of compiling it and then even turn around and give it away. Another source I've used very successfully over the years are commercial real estate firms. Commercial real estate firms, often on a biannual or semi-annual or monthly basis, will publish reports, issue reports about the local commercial real estate market, rental markets, maybe building permit things and stuff like that, and release it through their website. Now, it may not give you everything you might want to know about what's going on economically in an area, but it's a great source of information. So the point I really need to try to drive home here is, as librarians and people who help people in libraries, we need to really cultivate this sort of almost sixth sense almost of where to go to find stuff. That's what they need us for.
Okay, and we do have a multi-part question that came in.
Mm-hmm.
Are all of the government research activities that support the stats abstracts ending?
That's an excellent question, and I don't know the answer to that. In some cases, when a division is cut, an agency is cut, the staff in that agency, they move elsewhere within the Bureau, say, and then at least part of what they were doing before continue on. So that's possible. But based on the notes that we're seeing at the Census Bureau website, they explicitly say, we ceased collecting data for this. So for certain things, it's probably completely done for.
Okay, the next part of the question is, if the research isn't continuing, which segments are they continuing, and for which segments will we need to find alternative sources?
Yeah, and the answer to that is, who knows? At this point, no one knows. Okay. You know, they just discontinued as of October of 2011 last year, so it's probably going to be a while longer before we begin to get a sense of what's going to continue on and what dies.
So possibly that's the same answer for the next part of the last part of the question, which is, if the government is continuing some research activities, will that information be accessible via the web, and will there be a search interface designed for that information?
Last spring, when the director of the Census Bureau posted a message to his blog, the director's blog, talking about this whole situation, one of the things he talked about, was that in the era that we live in now, there may well be ways of distributing this information electronically that would be more efficient and have potential. So I know they're thinking about it, but we don't know yet what would be available and what the interface would be. It's still early in that. We can be pretty sure that, well, we know that what the system we've had for so long is done for in a lot of ways, but we don't know what the successor will be. Again, the question about interface is actually quite important. It's really, for the general public, for the citizenry, whatever lives on, whatever remains to be accessed, so to speak, we want it to be in a way that's pretty easy and convenient and easy to use. If all we end up getting is a website where you go and you can click on zipped data files that you have to download and then unzip, and then you discover you get a database or spreadsheet with a lot of real cryptic names for the different fields, and then you have to go get a data handbook to figure out what exactly all this is, and then you have to import it into a statistical package like SPSS or SAS in order to try to do any analysis on it and all that. you've just told, you know, 90% of the population that don't bother.
I couldn't agree more.
So that's a real important question. It's not just making it available, it's making it available in a way that people can actually use. The Census Bureau's American Fact Finder operation, and by the way, there'll be an NCompass Live on American Fact Finder in just a couple of weeks. That is an example of trying to arrive at a balance of serving the needs of the real hardcore data junkies and data wonks, while at the same time making data available to the general public. And those of you who've used American Fact Finder have noticed it's hard. It's hard. You try to address both needs well. The new American Fact Finder, we're all still getting used to it. I'm beginning to think it's got a lot of promise, but there was the early versions of it were terrible. So, but my last time using it, I was very successful. So these are excellent questions, and unfortunately the only answer I can give you is we don't know yet, but you've hit on some things that are really important. Anything else?
Those are all the questions that have come in so far, but if you do have a question, please be sure to type it into the question box, or let us know if you have a microphone that you'd like to use. Okay. Well, a couple of more things I'd like to get into in terms of alternatives. And I'm going to scroll down my presentation a little bit further. And I'm going to recommend to everybody exactly what the Census Bureau is recommending, and that is Appendix 1 of the Statistical Abstract. And this is Appendix 1 of the 2011 abstract I've got linked here, but it's also in the 2012 abstract. Appendix 1 is, Deborah, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go live to another web page again. Yeah, this is the one I want. Hey, my link worked this time. Give it a second until everybody else.
Okay, we got it. Appendix 1, it's your guide to sources. Consider this your hit list, your number one, your Billboard Top 200, whatever you want to call it. This appendix in the back of the Statistical Abstract, which most of us probably know is there but never bother to actually take a look at, is going to be very important. Even though the Statistical Abstract itself is not going to be updated down the line, this is your list of sources with at least root level or basic level URLs, if it's available online, with some information about formats and things and frequency. So either using the source notes at the bottom of the tables in the Statistical Abstract, or using this list of sources at the back of the abstract in the appendix. And this is, again, the Census Bureau itself is recommending that people look at this list of sources. We need to become very familiar with this. Those of us who work in libraries and help people, we need to become very familiar with this. Something I'm sort of planning to do, we'll see if I get to it, but over the summer I'm planning to develop a couple of new online research guides, and for topical things that probably need some more work on at our library. And I can guarantee I'll be browsing through here or browsing through the Stat Abstract tables to identify likely sources and using those as jumping off points to identify things to link up in my online research guide. And this information here will eventually begin to age out. It will begin to age out in time. The 2007 economic census tables, well, eventually there'll be 2012 economic census tables. And so over time, you know, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, at some point, this appendix to the Statistical Abstract won't be as useful as it is now. But for some period of time to come, this is something we all need to be very familiar with. And again, it's not just me recommending it. The Census Bureau itself is recommending that people use this table as a guide to sources.
A question did come in. Do you think the statistical abstracts will ever be brought back? As in, we realize we made a terrible mistake and have had so many complaints that we will find funds to bring it back.
It's always possible. I know that when the news came out last March, a lot of letters were written to members of Congress. Facebook pages were set up. All sorts of advocacy went on to support the statistical abstract, but to no avail. Potentially, as people start to figure out we're going to have to live without it, more advocacy occurs, and it gets resurrected at some point. We don't know. It's also possible that some company like Burnin Press might decide to try to come out with something on their own that would be probably not a perfect substitute, but some sort of substitute. We don't know yet. I'm not very hopeful. I'm not very hopeful. When you look at the latest Congressional Budget Office reports on the state of federal finances and things like that, I think we're entering into a period of time where we're going to see a lot more cuts than things preserved or started. I'm not very hopeful that we'll see it again. Man, I'm really depressing today, aren't I? My colleagues here are all staring at the table and shaking their heads. Okay. A couple of other things for alternatives. There's a few minutes left in our hour, so we should go back live to the web. So let's get back to my presentation again. Okay.
And there was a question about accessing this particular handout, and when we send out the email message about the link to the recording, we will also tell you where the handouts will be posted. But Jim, did you say they're available in another place also?
This file that we've been using, this PDF document that we've been using today is already available for download. You can go to slideshare.net, slideshare.net, search for Learning to Live Without a Statistical Abstract, and you can find the SlideShare page for this presentation, and then you can actually download it as a PDF. Now, SlideShare doesn't cost you any money, but SlideShare will ask you to register for a SlideShare account before they let you download it as a PDF. But it is available that way. If you don't care to do it that way, you can send an email to jshaw@unomaha.edu, jshaw@unomaha.edu, and say, hey, could you send me the PDF, and I'll just email it to you. Happy to do that. And with the exception of that one mistaken link we discovered earlier on, much to my embarrassment, everything is hot and clickable, and you can take it with you. And frankly, folks, if you want to go out to your own library associations or other places and structure a presentation using this as a starting point, go ahead and do it to help get the word out what's going on. So you're welcome to pilfer this for everything you can.
And as Deborah mentioned, we usually have links to any PowerPoints or handouts that were used in any of our presentations are archived as well. So you'll be getting information about those.
Okay. Thank you.
That's another place where we'll be.
At the bottom of the last part, a couple of pages of the presentation document, I've got federal sources, and of course we're in Nebraska here, so I have to have my Nebraska sources. But these are places where you can go. These play a lot of when you look at the source tables in the Statistical Abstract, you discover these are heavily used sources for the Statistical Abstract. So I just selected a few that I know from long experience I go to a lot. Okay, there's the Census Bureau website, but there's also, and I don't know how many people notice this link to their Subjects A to Z directory at the very top of their home page. If you've never gone into Subjects A to Z, do it. Go to Subjects A to Z. It's just a long, long subject directory that's very well maintained. Very rarely do I find a link in there that's broken. And you can use that as a way, and it's not just to the Census Bureau, it will take you elsewhere as well to find data. It's really important to get to know Subjects A to Z. I'm not going to take the time to link to it today because it's an A to Z directory. When you see it, you'll know what it is. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Economic Report of the President, those are sources that are probably pretty familiar to a lot of people. The Economic Report of the President, we got email from the Government Printing Office within the last week that the new one's been posted. The most current one has been posted at the Government Printing Office website. The depositories will all be getting our copies here pretty soon if they haven't already arrived. Now, those I'm assuming that folks who work with people in libraries a lot probably familiar with. I am, because I'm running the mouse right now, and this is the presentation I'm doing. I do want to make a real point that if folks are not familiar with the Economic Research Service of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, invest a little time getting familiar with them. They do a lot of research. They publish a lot of really good reports. And Deborah, I'm going to go ahead. I am going to jump to diet, health, and safety, just to at least get a sense of what's there. We caught up? We are caught up. Okay, take a look at the topics here in the middle of in publications, data products here in the in diet, health, and safety area, Economic Research Service of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Okay, this one right here that I've got I've moused over right now, household food security in the United States. This particular report has been a subject of some controversy. You know, exactly how bad has the Great Recession been? What does it practically mean at the level of households? How many children in this country are at some real risk of going to bed hungry every night? That's actually a tough statistic to gather. Think about what it would take to gather that kind of information, the kind of survey work you have to do, going into administrative records with various programs and things to try to gather that. What does household food security actually mean? Well, the data, there's a lot to think about in terms of gathering that kind of data. This is where you go to find out about that. What data is out there, how to interpret it, what goes into collecting it, and that kind of thing. This is really important stuff at the Economic Research Service of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. If it's not something you're familiar with, it's something you need to get familiar with if you're working in a library. I'm sort of getting on a soapbox here, but it's really important stuff. And this is the kind of thing that if we don't have a statistical abstract to sort of direct us to it, we need to know about it so we can hunt it down.
Yes, and Jim, I just noticed over to the right there, they too have an A to Z list of subjects.
List of all subjects.
I wonder what that is.
Yeah, well, we'll click and take a look.
I'm a big fan of those.
The nice things about these A to Z lists, yes, they're not especially elegant. They might even be called a little clunky in the current age. The thing is, they're simple. They're easy. Anybody can do it. If you're working at the reference desk and it's a busy period of time, you can click someone into it, and then while they take a look, you can turn your head for a moment and help someone else while they're taking a look. These A to Z lists are actually quite practical, and you will often find things in there that you might, if you've just gone into Google or Yahoo or Bing and done some searching that way, and you're just not coming up with what you're looking for, sometimes the way those search engines work, the way things are indexed, you're just not picking it up. You come here, it's an alternative way of potentially finding something.
Exactly. I just see it as something that a website provider puts up as an alternative to their own search engine.
Mm-hmm. Another thing to look at, site maps. If there's an agency website you're using a lot, check that if they have a site map available, check that site map, which will give you sort of a visual, a graphic of the structure of the website to help you drill down and find things as well. Now we do have a few Nebraska people among us. We have about 25 people altogether on the registered for the presentation. A few Nebraska folks. So if you'll indulge me for a moment, I would like to look at some, at least one, if not two, Nebraska things. And is this okay to do this?
Yeah. Do you want to show the screen your list of?
Yeah. Let's go ahead and do that. As the hour goes by, you can tell we're getting a little more proficient here, jumping back and forth. Thank you, Deborah. Okay. Are we caught up?
Yes.
Okay. Now, for those of you who are Nebraska people, I've got a number of sites to take a look at here. Nebraska sort of has its own statistical abstract. It's developed by the Department of Economic Development Data and Research Office. That they used to call it what do they call it now, Beth? They don't call it the data book anymore. What do they call it now?
I'm not sure they've given it a name. I know that the site is still active.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
we changed our link to it, and we don't call it.
Yeah,
I think we may still be calling it the data book, even though when you go there, it doesn't say that.
Yeah, but it's a great source for, it's like a statistical abstract for the state of Nebraska, which is great, except when you look at some of the sources that they're drawing from, some of the sources they're drawing from are sources that are being affected by the budget cuts and things at the Census Bureau. So we'll see what goes on there. A couple of things I really like. In the time we have left, there's only a couple minutes. I'm just going to do one more. It's one of my all-time favorites, Nebraska Public Power District sites. I don't know how many people, I know people at the Library Commission know it and use it.
They are actually part of our state documents collection, and you can quibble a bit about whether NPDD is actually a state agency, but we do have, they're online, and we do have them in our state publications collection, and they're now available online, so we make them available online.
Yeah, archived. That's really important. A lot of chambers of commerce and city governments and agencies around the state of Nebraska cooperate with NPPD to create like fact books on their community. It's mostly for economic development purposes, but these fact books cover all sorts of information about communities that are hard to find, especially for small rural towns. Hard to find a lot of information on them, and it's certainly not in a real nice convenient place. So you can sort of see on the right-hand side, we've got recent fact books on Hartington, Nebraska and Minden, Nebraska, industrial site information about industrial sites, industrial parks, things like that. Maybe my favorite thing down here is the site's geographic, I hope this works, where you can, say, choose a city, say Aurora, set some radii, and then from the geographic center of the city of Aurora, get radius tables. I help a number of classes at my university that do community analysis projects, and these radius tables particularly for small rural towns, where are you going to get information like this? Not easy to find it all nicely digested down in a radius form like this, which is really helpful. Also, NPPD contracts with a market research company to run some projections as well. So they give you, and it's been updated since the last time I looked, 2015 projections. I don't know of another place where you can find projections for this kind of data. So I need to sum up quickly. Our presentation today was learning to live without a statistical abstract, thinking about future access to government information. For all of those who have hung on with us the entire hour, I want to say thank you very much. If you found some of the technical things amusing, you should. This is my very first time doing a presentation using this kind of a format. It's a bit of a learning experience, so you can, if you want to laugh at somebody, you're welcome to send that my direction. But I hope that you found some of what we covered today, at least something of what we covered today, interesting and useful to you. Use my email, again, jshaw@unomaha.edu. You are welcome to contact me with more questions, requests for more information. I'll send you a PDF copy of the presentation document so you can explore further on your own. And thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you, Jim, very much for all that information. That was very useful. And I learned more. I'm not sure about Beth and Lori. They know a lot of this information. But
Jim's the expert, so I always learn something listening to him.
Right. Well, thank you very much. And we will be back again next week with another edition of NCompass Live. Everyone who registered today will be receiving an email when the announcing when the recording is up. And that's it for today. Thanks so much.